What's going on? What's up? What's happening? Uh, I am live from Certain Path in Addison, Texas, as I agreed that I was going to be. This is a little earlier than ordinary, and the plan was actually to have. Um, there was a bunch of business owners here. We just finished a training called Developing Effective Managers. It was very insightful training. Learned a whole lot. Illuminated some things, some strengths, some weaknesses, some processes, ways that we could do things better. Pretty neat. Anyway, I figured I would go live from here and talk to some business owners and potentially employees that work here and like just kind of like share some adventures and whatnot. And so actually what ended up happening was everybody there everybody grabbed their flights early, and then we've got a going away party for a long time employee here. So I'm going to do this solo, but it's funny because I started when I first started in this industry. For those of you guys that don't know what Certain Path is, so Certain Path used to be called SGI, Success Group International, and it's a group for the betterment of HVAC contractors, plumbing contractors, electrical contractors. They have all sorts of resources that you can tap into that are just for resources for the betterment. There's training, there's management training, there's technician training, there's sales training, service training, communication training, emotional intelligence training. So it's pretty robust program of what they offer here. And look, there's different trades groups and whatnot, and there's different groups that people belong to. I just happen to be sort of involved with this group for a really long time, on and off through the years. Worked for a couple different outfits, and those couple different outfits actually belonged to Certain Path. I had joined Certain Path, which again was SGI, Success Group International, back some years back. My first experience in the entire industry 15 years ago was actually a company that belonged to, at the time, it was a group of SGI called Airtime 500. It's the same group, same people. It was developed by the same people. And so I learned so much about this industry and about technical training and about all sorts of other things from this group. And so I have my heart, I hold this group sort of close to my heart. And the last time, so I actually, what brought me here down to Dallas from New Jersey was actually they do a meeting called Executive Perspective, and like all these people come in from around the country, and there's this whole week long or 4-day long sort of like powwow, and they sit down. It's crazy. They roll through everything that they do. It's called Executive Perspective. And I met a business owner who then I later went to go join down here in Dallas. That's actually how I ended up down here in Dallas. Which, obviously was a huge move. But great resource. The training was really, really good. This isn't a business development podcast, so I don't want to get into the doldrums of it. But I will say that, for people, because a lot of industry people definitely, watch and listen to this. I think it's, important to if you haven't investigated this group, they're not sponsoring this in any way. I'm just saying this from my heart. If you haven't investigated this group, Certain Path, you definitely should. I did have a previous guest who told some incredible stories, who was a Certain Path, is a Certain Path sales coach, and Esty, and her episode is one of the most popular ones. She tells some incredible stories. And really funny. I mean, I've been on a podcast and had somebody type in the live chat a story that she told as being one of the funniest stories that they've ever heard. So in any case, here I am. Training was good. There were some takeaways that I had that were started to bring me back. And the last time, so I went to a conference in Sarasota, Florida, some years ago, and I remember it sort of bringing back old sort of memories of my days, in the field, and it brought me back to a story that I remember of doing a job. At the time, I had a home performance company. It's a long story. Anyway, so it's insulation, air sealing. We're doing like whole home sort of approaches, right? So I go to this house in Bayonne, and so like I'm in the lower level and then I'm in the upper level, and it's like kind of a disaster. And there's like I had to replace like a furnace, and there was so I sold the guy a furnace, an air conditioner, a water heater, a little bit of gas piping because we had to move some stuff. And then I think there was some duct work or something like that, but it wasn't like an enormous job, right? And just to give you like a perspective of how different like natured like municipalities are and government authorities are in this world in different states and states to state, we got the permit packet back for that job. And just doing the minimal amount of work that we did there, it was a good amount of work, but either way, just doing that amount of work was like $770 in permit fees. Just doing that. $770. For retrospect, your permit should be anywhere from like $50 to like maybe $250 being like a lot, maybe $300 being a lot. Here, okay, so I move here, okay, so $750 in Bayonne, New Jersey. I move here, and that requires like handwritten documents, and you got to fill everything out in triplicate, and then you got to like scan it all in and send it all out, and they have 24 days or something like that they can that they have to fill it out or whatever, or to approve them. And so I come here, and then they were just like scanning in, like literally scanning a document in or filling it out online, and it was like boom, and then you just print your permit out right there. So anyway, I am actually a little upset because I had this whole big plan of having all of these different business owners come on the podcast. There was this one guy, Steve, that was here. He was actually from Pittsburgh, but he was a private pilot for years, and he looked like a pilot. Like the guy literally looked like Sully, like he had his mustache, the whole deal. And he flies. He has a share in a private plane, and he takes his employees. He owns a plumbing company in Pittsburgh. Takes his employees and goes on like trips with them. Literally goes on trips with them, like brings them on the plane. So I thought that was actually pretty neat. But I remember I ran this call up in it. So this brought back all these memories of like these different calls that I ran back in the day. I remember I went to this place. There's a place called Cliffside Park, and in Cliffside Park there was it's very busy, like right outside New York City, and it's in Hudson County, and it's like building to building to building to building. This guy, like, he had this like newspaper article, and he was like, I need you to replace my boiler. And I got this newspaper article here, and this is like an ad. And so he brought me into, it was like a commercial building basically. And he brought me in, and there was all these boilers in there, and I'm looking at all these boilers, and it was kind of like a weird, like basement utility room closet thing. And I remember like going in there and looking around, and then I was able to like kind of quote the system. But then he was like, well, hang on. I said, oh, can I look at the space of where this heats? And he brings me into what can only really be described as like a backdoor card game. It was like a backdoor card game. And so this backdoor card game, it was an Albanian like social club, and like it was during the day, and there's like drinks being poured, and it was like everybody, like I walked in, like everybody just stopped, like turned, like looked at me and like what is this guy doing here? It was like really, really strange. One of the stranger sort of experiences that I've had. Yeah, and also brought me back to this one time that this is actually a pretty heartwarming story. So there was this woman. This is a longer story actually. There was this woman who she was a widow, and she lived in a really nice area. And um, I had asked her, she was talking about her husband. Her husband's name was Bruce, and I had asked her about what had happened, and she had said to me that her husband actually had died in a diving accident, I guess, like a scuba diving accident. And I thought that was really interesting, and so she told me more about it. And what happened was he was down there with another guy, and I think there was three of them, might have been two, but they were down there and they went pretty deep apparently. And so they were running out of time on their oxygen tanks. So they didn't have enough oxygen to make it back for both of them to make it back up. So one of the guys had more oxygen than the other. So that guy actually went to go up and to get the other oxygen tank to bring it down. Otherwise, because they had to stop periodically on the way up, so they were going to lose. So only one of them could go. The other, because otherwise they wouldn't have made it. So the one guy goes, and he never goes back to get the other guy, and the other guy ended up waiting for him, and then eventually, like, he drowned down there. It was a really sad story. And I don't know, he was apparently, I don't know, maybe he was about 50 when this happened. Well, the woman who was telling this story never got over this. She just never got over it. I mean, you could tell by talking to her. And it was a beautiful old house, and it was a sad story. Fast forward. I run a different call in the same town. And in that woman's house, she's a widow. And then she tells me the story of losing her husband. And then she starts telling me that she was in like a group with other women who were also widows. Now, mind you, I'm the AC guy. I'm literally just quoting like boilers or air conditioners, whatever it was. And I hear her story about how she is a widow and she was in a widows group. And I start talking to her, and I mention in passing, I'm like, I just ran this other call on the other side of town of this woman, and she told me this story about this diving accident that happened. And she's like, wow, wait a minute, what? And apparently they knew each other, but they weren't on social media. I want to say this is about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. They were older. They weren't on social media. They hadn't found each other. So she goes, would you do me a favor? I'm like, yeah, I think I have an appointment with her. She goes, would you do me a favor? Would you please go ahead and give her my information? I would love to have lunch with her, dinner with her, whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to her. So here I am again, complete stranger. And I end up connecting these two widows who had apparently known each other, and they like rekindled their friendship all because of like strange happenstance that I happened to be, in the house, like at the right time or whatever it was. That was bonkers. In that same time period, which was so strange. Because, and again, this brings me back to the certain path thing, because it is all the time that I had joined. In that same time period, I had went into another house, and it was like the same week, and I met another widow, and I was very like, at the time, I'm like now thinking, okay, like God's trying to give me a sign here. Like, what the heck is going on? Why am I in so many houses with so many widows? And it really started to freak me out. So I actually, to the final widow that I went to go talk to, I told her the story. I'm like, hey, I'm really freaking out here. I'm like, I keep seeing like all you, like you're like the third or fourth house I've been to with a widow. Like, this is really scaring me. And she like did like a quasi like interpretation for me. And she said, don't worry about it. She's like, it really is just God telling you that the importance of your role in your household. And I took that to heart. Thought that was actually really, really a great interpretation. But so yeah, so I ended up. Long story short, the CEO of Certain Path was actually going to actually come on. She got caught up in a meeting. Then I had a long-time employee has like a going away thing happening. And so anyway, they all left. But I'm happy to be here with you guys. And I'm happy that I'm doing this. And I'm looking forward to taking all this stuff back that I learned here. One thing, and again, this is not really about like, again, it's not a business building podcast, but I thought this was really, really interesting about like understanding people. And they like have this like thing where they have like a quadrant, right? And it's and it's like to understanding people. And the quadrant really goes like one side is like attitude and one side is aptitude, right? And it's like so one side is like your ability to, I'll just show you guys this. So it's like your ability to do something, right? Aptitude. And then like your attitude is like, you know, whether or not you're willing to do something. And like basically you have like you put your employees or people or like people you work with in these like buckets. And it's like, okay, is this person smart and good at what they do and they have a terrible attitude, right? Or is this person smart and, you know, has a great attitude and does their job really well? Is this person like kind of like not as good at their job, but they have a great attitude and they have their role too? And then is this person just not good at their job and also has a bad attitude? So it's like those things. And you sort of bucket people. And it could be amorphous. It could move. You could move from, you know, having a good attitude and to not having a good attitude, you know, to, you know, putting extra effort into things and to not putting extra effort into things. But this was like a really big takeaway for mine and part of like a little glimpse of like what this organization has to kind of offer and so forth. And look, the podcast is Sales Tales, and this is obviously going to, you know, a passionate topic for a lot of people that are going to watch, right? I mean, everybody wants to get better at it. And the purpose of this is not to get better, but I like sharing that with you guys. And I listen to a lot of that stuff. And for those of you guys that are not listening to, you know, self-development, whatever, I'd say like, you know, that's something you should definitely work into your, you know, to your equation. So, okay. I'm only going to be on here for a few more minutes. So, couple things. A very interesting individual reached out to me. Everybody knows who he is. He is coming on the podcast. We are coordinating dates right now. I believe it's going to be next week. And so I'm very excited to announce that Ken Goodrich has reached out to me, and Ken would like to come on and share. I mean, he's got like so many stories that he wanted to share. Like he's really excited about the ability to do this. So, and for those of you that don't know who Ken Goodrich is, he's built like a home services empire. He's like the CEO of Gettle. He's the brains behind it. I mean, literally, you know, flies around in a jet throughout the whole country. He's been on a bunch of podcasts. I haven't seen him on a lot of podcasts recently, so I'm really excited that he reached out and he wants to come on Sales Tales because, and he wants to just like, boom, like open book, like he wants to tell everything. So, I'm excited about Ken coming on. Tommy Mello and I are still trying to work out dates and whatnot. These people that run these massive organizations, they sure are really busy. They're very, very difficult to kind of nail down for dates and whatnot. I also have a friend of mine. Her name is Jane. She spent years and years. It is a little sadder, but she spent years and years as a social worker. And so I was in this house. So she has stories that like will blow your mind. And I really like, we talked about it. And so she's going to come on and tell her experiences. That one's going to be heavy. Hopefully we'll try to keep it a little bit light, but she has some things to say. So that'll be Jane as well. So yes, Ken Goodrich, and then Tommy Mello, and then Jane. And then there's a whole bunch of other guests as well. Couple things. If you know somebody that you think would make like really good entertainment, and or at least has like a lot to talk about, has been an industry veteran, like I know a lot of people and I can keep this going for a long time, but I would very much like to hear from you guys. And so I have gotten some messages like, oh, hey, you should talk to so-and-so. If you know somebody that is like, dude, you have to talk to this person and I haven't talked to them yet, please send them my way. You can either DM me on either the Sales Tales or on Facebook, on either my personal or podcast page. And you can also email soiwasinthishouse@gmail.com. And I very much want to speak to people that have exciting stories or interesting adventures, or they have like a journey that people would really want and need to hear. And there's a lot of people that have been on these different podcasts that have talked to a lot of people about their stories. There's a lot of people that fly under the radar. And I know like I've talked to people who also really, they don't actually want to come on and tell their story. Another thing, if you don't want to go live, if you just want to like record an episode and then have it dropped later, like you can do that. Like I will record the episode and then drop it later if you don't feel comfortable live streaming. I'm getting all of these messages now. So yeah, yes. So Joe O'Grady just messaged and said, "Can I curse?" Yes, Joe. Yes, you can curse. Rule number like 3 or 4 is if you're offended, you're the problem. So very funny. For those of you guys that don't know, Joe is like a plumbing coach. He's home services kind of guy. He goes around the country and he trains people. He's got a lot to talk about. But yes, so if you know somebody, get them in touch with me. I would highly recommend, if you haven't, again, I'm not plugging them at all. I'm just saying, I think that Certain Path is a great organization. I'm here. I finished a training. I feel fulfilled. I even have a certificate. I have lots of these that I've probably lost over the years. I even have a certificate, and the training is so valuable. You can bring it back to your teams. You can implement them easily. One thing I will say for the specific individual that taught this course, his name is Michael Zeller. He made everything palpable, easy to digest. It was understandable. Great dialogue. It wasn't a lot of like tons and pages of content. It was very succinct, very concise, very easy to digest, and also very philosophical. Like we went through the room and it'd be like someone would tell a story and then another person would say something, oh, I'm having this problem and I'm having that problem. And a lot of the value of a group like this is to hear from other people and what they're going through, and then try to, if you're hearing them, you may say, oh, that rings a bell. And then you can take that and you can utilize it in your business. It always helps to hear how somebody either is having or overcoming something so that you can have or you can overcome something. I think that's like the value of having it. They also put on like an event called Expo, these huge events and whatnot. And it's good to just be social and to talk to people. And I hope that I hope that during their next expo, like I'll actually be able to, if they'll allow me, I would love to go through and maybe interview people and have their authority to like go through expo and like talk to people and whatnot. And it would be really cool to like live stream and also soak it in, because I want to take the classes and do all the keynote speaking events and whatnot too. But yeah. So okay, all announcements are done. Appreciate it. I don't have much else. I just, thank you for letting me, go on for about a half an hour telling nonsensical stories and uh, my experiences of the day and a week. But I'm really looking forward. And again, I will post as soon as Ken and I get a time together. Hopefully, it's gonna be next week. Right now, tentatively, it's gonna be for next Wednesday, which is July 3rd, which will be cool. We'll live stream at night. Uh, Probably everybody's, going to be starting the festivities for July 4th. Who knows? Maybe it works for him, maybe it doesn't, but I'm excited. So awesome. And I will catch you next week. I might drop a video here and there during the course of the week this week, but otherwise I will just come straight at it next week and we will rock and roll. All right, guys.